So, here we go, finishing Iceland.
Are you ready?
You're on. Yes, you're in business.
Well, of course, Iceland, because I was there for 2¼ years, has quite a lot of stories. We were supposed to be a mountain division, which meant that we did a lot of exercises out in the snow, digging snow holes, making snow bunkers and places to sleep and so on and so forth. But one notable story was one of our officers and 3 of the other ranks were allowed to climb Mount Hecla, which is a big, very big ice-covered glacier, volcano in the southeast corner of Iceland. It's very big indeed. I can't remember the height. I think I've got it somewhere, but it's quite high. And we climbed it, and you climb up the side of a gorge with a river at the bottom, and you eventually get to the snow line, or ice line rather, and then from there to the top, it's really only a very hard walk. And from the top, I have photographs taken north, south, east and west. And the photograph to the south shows a bunch of islands, the name of which I can't remember, but they were 250 miles away.
Good Lord.
So the atmosphere was very, very clear, and of course we were pretty high. But the weather was quite reasonable, and we spent 3 days or 3 nights on Hecla. And the last day we were coming down the side of this gorge, and Henry Holmes, who was a sergeant, and I were about a couple of 100 metres ahead of the officer and the other chap. And we heard a cry and turned round, and the other chap, whose name I forget now, was rolling base over apex down this steep slope of the side of the gorge, which ended in a precipice down to the river.
Oh dear, tricky.
And it disappeared over the edge. And so Henry and I decided that Henry would go back and see what he could do to help, and I, being a better athlete, would run to the nearest farm and phone for help. And it was a hell of a run. It was when I got off the side of the gorge, it was flat, but it was all tussocks, and I had to jump from one tussock of grass to the next. And it was about, I would say, 3 miles. And I eventually arrived at this farm, absolutely and utterly exhausted. And I managed to, I had a phone, fortunately, and I phoned through to base and reported what had happened. And then I passed out. And I came round sometime later and had a bowl of porridge, and eventually the door opened and in walked the other 3 members of the climbing party.
Oh yes.
And I was absolutely astonished. And apparently it wasn't this chap that was rolling down the hillside, it was his big pack
Oh, right.
that had come off and was rolling down. So, well, of course, we'd set off at a real train of activity, and people kept arriving and having to be told everything was okay. So we weren't too popular.
Right.
Anyway, fortunately, we had an officer with us, so he took all the brunt of
The flak.
flak. And that was that. I enjoyed the mountain uh, activity, the living in the snow and skiing and all the various activities. So,
Yeah.
and we had a chap very famous for bird painting, very famous, I can't remember his name now, but he was there because he was also an Arctic expert, and he was giving us advice on living under those conditions. And that was one experience.
What about Churchill?
Churchill, yes. Well, I was on duty one night, and I was what they call a high-grade cipher operator, which meant that I could decipher anything that came in, despite its secrecy. And we got a most secret message one night, this particular night, which I deciphered. And it was at the time after Churchill had met Roosevelt near Newfoundland, and they'd formed the Atlantic Treaty Organisation. And this was for Mr. Churchill, as he then was, for his eyes only, which meant I had to take it round to his Nissenhut, which was, he'd taken over the General GOC's Nissenhut and was living there. And so I knocked on the door, and I suppose his butler or batman or whatever it was came, and I said, I have a most immediate message for Mr. Churchill's eyes only. Would you please bring him? He said, no, you can give it to me, I'll give it to him. He's fast asleep. I said, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I have to deliver it personally to Mr. Churchill. So he disappeared, and Churchill arrived a minute or two later in his dressing gown, not looking very happy because he'd been woken up. And I explained the circumstances, and he said, it's all right. I gave him a message. And the message was to the effect that the Americans were going to come to Iceland and take over from the British, and we should be going home. And he looked up at me with his twinkle in his eye, and said, that's good news, isn't it? I said, yes, sir, it's very good news. And with that I said, good night, sir, and
Nice.
off he went.
Oh, yeah, very good.
So that was the occasion when I met Churchill, and I got into trouble over that as well, because the senior officer in the office, said you should have brought it to me.
Right.
I knew I was right, because it said for Churchill's eyes only.
Yes, yes.
And so I didn't get into any bother.
And how long was Churchill there for, Dad? Was he just passing through?
He would be there for about 3 or 4 nights.
Right, right.
There was a big parade, and Roosevelt's son was also there.
Right.
He was a captain in the American Navy, and they had a big parade of all the troops, well, not all the troops, but a lot of the troops.
Yeah.
And I was deputed to take photographs for some reason or other.
Right.
And so I have some very good photographs of Churchill at the salute.
Oh, have you?
Oh, yes.
Right, in the house?
Hmm?
In the house?
They're upstairs, yes.
Oh, I've been to see those diodes upstairs.
And of Roosevelt's son.
Yeah. Oh, right, so interesting.
And anyway, there we are. They didn't knight me or anything for that. I don't know why.
Right, we've got a couple more minutes to finish up on Iceland.
Oh, right. Well, another interesting little thing that happened. My very good friend Derek Jennings was in Iceland also with the Dirty Dukes, the first 6 Dukes, and we had a particular sort of nightclubby place we used to go to, where one of the leading lights was a lady christened Polska Jona, Polish Joan, and she was pretty easy to get on with. And one night she was dancing with somebody, a man, obviously, and collapsed. And this chap sort of scooped her up and was taking her out. And Derek said, well, you know, where are you taking her? Oh, I said, it's all right, she's a friend of mine, I'm taking her home.
Mm.
Well, Derek didn't believe this, neither did I, because he was a pretty crummy looking bloke.
Was he English?
Pardon?
He was English?
No,
Oh.
he wasn't, he was Greek.
Oh, right.
And there was a Greek ship, I can't remember the name, a short name like Tiki or something, a short name anyway. Tina, I think it was a Tina.
No.
In port and down in the docks. And Derek followed them, and this chap took her onto this ship. They were obviously taking her probably to the Middle East as a, you know,
a sex slave.
Yes.
Right.
And so we reported to the police.
Yeah.
And went with the police down to the ship to make sure they knew which one it was. And the police went on board, and they found her locked in a cabin under sedation. She'd been sedated in the dance place.
Yeah.
And so they released her and arrested the bloke.
Oh, right. Wait, I mean, I've heard the story before. I didn't actually realise it was in Reykjavik.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes, it was in Reykjavik.
Okay, oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so basically stayed there until sorry, was it sort of late summer '42?
Yeah.
And then came home.
That's right. I came home on there's a liner, a Monaco Bermuda. That was one I was on. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay, and then you had some leave, and we'll leave it at that for the moment.
I had leave, and then I was posted to the No. 3 Intelligence School in London.
Which we will come on to in the next episode.
Yeah.
Right, okay, that's good.